I'm David Lamm. I'm with the National Soil Health Division, and we're here talking questions. John's going to be asking me some questions about cover crops. So, John.
Yeah, we're real happy to have David here at the JML Whitten Plant Material Center. We're working on a lot of cover crop stuff. We're having some field days. We have a lot of questions that necessarily I'm not sure that we have answers for in the South yet, but we're certainly working toward those. But we just made up a small list of questions that we often get asked by producers and landowners, and even some of our field office people who are trying to assist our landowners. One thing is, even with our long growing season, we have a short window that cover crops are being analyzed amongst farmers commonly here in the Delta. Their normal planting dates are really late October, early November, and termination dates are occurring somewhere around February 1st because people are so much in a hurry to get crop seed in the ground and beat that summer drought. So major resource concerns in the Delta, percentage of organic matter in our soil and infiltration rates. Do you see a way that cover crops can be successful in that short window?
Well, I asked the question why the window's short. I think if you get proper selection and varieties, what you're trying to do is start off with things getting some biomass. Get your high biomass producing cover crops, your cereal rye, some of the some of the millets and those types of things. I think that's a tough one. Why are farmers reluctant to not take advantage of a September seeding as opposed to an October seeding?
So you're thinking what you're telling us is maybe we should work more towards extending that window instead of trying to come up with the perfect species to just fill the window.
Well, I think what farmers need to do is you need to understand why are we cover cropping. We just cover cropping to throw it out there. And once we can convince farmers the purpose that they're gaining, then they'll figure out how to make it happen. Why do we cover crop? Is it just to get, for weed control, you need biomass to smother. And that's the biggest thing. How do you get more biomass? You gain longer season. For nutrient management, for clovers, you need time to allow that nitrogen to be able to be produced. Unfortunately, it happens in the spring, which it's not going to happen before February 1st. So is there a way to push it the other way? Why are we seeding in February 1st as opposed to March 1st? Well, you're trying to beat that dry spell in the summer. Why do you have a dry spell? Well, you have low organic matter soils. How do you build organic matter soils? Well, you need biomass. So you need to take advantage, just like in a commodity crop, you need a certain amount of growing degree days to achieve maximum production. It's the same thing with a cover crop. You need to extend and have this kind of offer it the same opportunities to take advantage of that sunlight. But I think once I think we tend to focus too much on the cover crop and not so much on what it takes to improve soil health. And once farmers understand what it takes to improve soil health, then they're more willing to make these changes and adjustments.
Thanks very much for that. Another question we often have, trying to pull the plow away from the farmer. Our guys like to plow. I think they like to burn diesel too. Can cover crops, the extra seed cost identified with cover crops, is it justifiable in these conventional tillage solutions, or does reduction of tillage have to go along with it to justify the cover crop seed?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't have that much experience. I think again it gets back to maximizing your costs. Again, follow the principle. What does it take to improve soil health? Well, you need to minimize disturbance, whether it's physical disturbance through tillage. You can get disturbance through by misapplication of materials, over fertilization. That's a one. You need to add diversity. Most commodity crops, whether it be corn and beans, cotton, peanuts, whatever, we don't have much diversity, and that lack of diversity affects the soil. Well, one thing I try and get farmers to look at is their soil it's a habitat, and whether they recognize it or not, they're managing they're controlling the biological organisms in their soil by their management. Most of them don't recognize that, so they create hostile environments for beneficial organisms to thrive, and they create favorable conditions for non-beneficial, such as rooting nematodes or Pythia phytophthora. They tend to thrive in the most degraded conditions. So we try and overcome those. But so you need to practice keep a living root growing as long as possible. I think it's possible. I think again you need to you get more benefit by looking at it as a systematic approach than just trying to do it incorporating in but just piecemealing, I guess.
You brought up the nematodes, which is something that we're hearing more and more about with the cover crops, and nematodes are a huge problem in the South. One of those reasons is single crops following the same single crop year after year. The lack of crop rotation. A lot of that has to do with commodity prices and soil types. It drives continuous cotton or continuous soybean sometimes, where you run into these huge nematode problems. What you see advertised or what you hear advertised is, hey, here's these cover crops that have these abilities. Do you see that as a driving force in the South?
I think it can be. I think to think that you're going to go in and control nematodes by using radishes is probably a little over optimistic. There's for every one negative or non-beneficial nematode, there's at least one, if not more, beneficial. And what you have to do is create an environment that allows things to feed on each other. It's a food web, and there's nematodes tend to be the root-eating nematodes that cause your problem are at the lower trophic levels or the bottom level. Well, if you create the environment to allow other nematodes that are beneficial to thrive and flourish by providing them a food source, providing them a house to live in, and protecting them from other predators, you kind of establish this predator-prey thing, and they can control those. You actually need a few of that. Sounds kind of silly. You actually need a few non-beneficials to feed this upper levels of the food chain. But if you think it's going to just happen by just planting a tillage radish that has nematicide properties, you're probably going to be very disappointed. But if you plant that radish as part of an overall program that improves soil health, you change that biological habitat to allow more diversity of microbes in the soil, then you're gonna be a lot.
So the diversity is much better than just the one species.
Yeah, I would never.
Impact.
Yeah, don't just think you're gonna plant radishes and control your nematodes. You might get by with it a year, but you're going to be, and you got to think about what you're applying, so you have a problem. The problem is most of our insecticides are not species specific. So you go and you apply something to control your root feeding nematodes, well, you're going to take out all of them. And so you've removed that layer in the food web that's necessary to create that diversity that drives the whole system. So.
This is a common question that we get, and I know there's no magic bullet answer, but a lot of times we're asked, a producer's ready to go all in, reduce tillage, go the full cover crop scenario. How long, and this is usually the question we get, how long will it take me, a farmer, to see a real difference?
So one thing we need to remember, we're not talking geological soil formation, and that's a huge difference. We're not starting from parent material and creating topsoil. What we're trying to do, we've already got the topsoil. What we're trying to do is create the conditions that drive it. So you start to increase organic matter, you start to improve soil aggregation, those things that are key to allow water to infiltrate. How long? Define what's success. I've had farmers tell me when I first started no-till, and you're a big no-tiller, John, they love no-till in the fall because their fields were firm, they didn't rut up. You've probably experienced that on your farm. So is that an indicator of improved soil health? Yeah, in my opinion it is. Now, can I measure that in a lab? Probably not. So what can we do? We need to start to look at incorporating those principles of diversity, minimizing disturbance, keeping a living root growing, keeping cover on top of it as quick as we can. You'll start to see changes in 2 or 3 years. The key here is don't start with the most difficult crop. What's the most difficult crop? Corn. Why is it? It needs water and it needs nitrogen.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a nutrient hog. So when you're starting into a system, start with an easier crop. Soybeans is pretty easy. No-tilling soybeans into a rye cover crop. Why would you do that? The rye will serve as one that helps control weeds, so you got a better weed control. You probably won't have to come back with multiple applications. You've got it preserves moisture. You got a nice barrier there, mulch layer, and those type of things. And soybeans tend to thrive under those conditions. It keeps the soil temperature cooler. You may have a 15, 20 degree temperature change. So start with that when you're building your system, rather than we tend to start with corn because that's the beginning of the rotation, like Sunday's the beginning of the week. Well, we can change that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Along those same lines, the percent organic matters in the soils that you see in the Midwest that are documented behind some of these cover crop scenarios, realistically, what do you feel is achievable in the South?
I tell folks to go out and look in their woods or look in those non-disturbed areas. What's their organic matter level? 1%, 2%? You ought to be able to, because what we're talking about is mimicking nature by following those principles. So you ought to be able to get that. Now, how do you get that? Well, you need to raise biomass. And biomass is just plant vegetation, and that's really key, and we're talking 1% organic matter is equivalent to about 20,000 pounds in an acre furrow slice there, 2 million pounds. So you think about what's going to take me 20,000 pounds? Well, unfortunately, for every 1,000 pounds or 100 pounds, whatever unit, that biomass you produce, only about 3 to 8% of that actually gets turned into organic matter that's stable, can last. So you do the math, so you need to produce over time, close to 2 million pounds of biomass. Now that seems unattainable, but it's not unusual for a good healthy cover crop. You can produce down here with all the growing degrees, you could produce 10, 15,000 pounds above ground biomass. And we don't even count the root system. I mean, and many people say it's a pound above is about the same as a pound below. But you think about even taking out 50%, you may have, you got 10,000 pounds below. Think about 5,000 pounds below ground. That's 15, 20,000 pounds a year. You can add it up. So it's not unusual to see a potential gain of a 0.1% a year if you don't till it. But again, look at what, look at that. And why is that important? Every 1% organic matter will give you 25 to 27,000 gallons of water to tap into. That's huge. That's a huge available water capacity most soils don't have.
Thank you very much.
Oh, good. Enjoyed it.